Hey, my name is Kelly Kessler. I'm the host of the podcast Rewiring Health, and I'm obsessed with helping you stop feeling burnout, living in pain, and anxious about the future. You see, for years, I felt like I was never good enough. I repeated in my head, when I accomplish this, then I'll finally be happy. And even when I accomplished it, there was always emptiness in my heart. I always put others' needs before my own. Negative thoughts ran wild in my head, and I always struggled to truly feel like I could relax and be present. Well, through my journey of healing, rewiring my brain, regulating my nervous system, and reprogramming my subconscious mind, I have recovered from an eating disorder, I have healed from chronic back pain, and I can truly be present with my two boys and feel that I am living the life I was destined to live with purpose and with joy. And I'm here to guide you along the same journey of healing. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode. When I struggled with feeling like I was never enough and attached my worth to my accomplishments, I didn't know where to begin. And the last thing I wanted as a high achiever and a perfectionist was someone telling me I need to overhaul my life because I already felt overwhelmed. So that's why I created this free daily checklist to get your nervous system back on track and start feeling free in your mind and body and stop feeling burnout. Grab it in the link below and enjoy. I was recording a podcast episode with someone last night, and we just really hit it off and resonated with each other. And there's just an energy that we shared. And as we were talking, one thing that came up, and this episode we posted in July, but one thing that came up is how we wish there were more people who are vulnerable and could speak about not being okay and that being okay, that it's okay to not be okay. Because a lot of times we can feel like we're very alone in our journeys. And when we're struggling with something, we feel like we're the only ones who could truly understand what this feels like. I was talking with this person. We have very similar paths in things that we've gone through. And we were saying to each other, man, I wish I knew you back when I was going through some of those things, because it would have just felt so good to know that you're not the only one alone, and you're not dealing with it alone, and you're not the only one who's experiencing this, and that you can be a support system for each other. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. And this is kind of off the cuff. It just kind of came to me, and I wanted to really talk about this because I think it's really important that we talk about being okay when we're not okay. And one thing that I did for years was just conceal everything. I would put on a happy face for the world, show everyone this perfect, good side. And yet in my heart, I knew I was not okay. And I didn't feel like that was okay to allow that more vulnerable side out. So it was a constant, like, protective hiding of my true feelings. And that is one of those things that I think many of us do, is that we try to show this picture of what we want the world to see. And it is it's a very protective mode to go into, because we don't allow people in. We don't allow people to see our vulnerable side. And in some cases, that's okay, because you have to feel like you're safe in how you're progressing forward. But if you're doing that around the people that you do feel safe and secure around, that's when it becomes a bigger issue, when you're saying I'm fine to the people that you know are truly supportive of you. And so as we move forward, a big thing that has helped me along the process, and it's an ongoing process, it's never like you're completely fine and everything is great and you hit this level of never needing to grow. It's an ever evolving process of trying to figure out how you can be okay when you're not okay. But one thing that has really shifted gears for me is learning how to treat myself with compassion rather than just concealing it. So switching the games to where I can recognize that I'm not feeling okay, but how can I treat myself with compassion and recognize that it's okay to not be okay, and that this is part of the human experience, and that suffering is part of the human experience. And it's that growth that we gain through suffering that creates this beautiful change within us. And so recognizing that there's not something innately wrong with us when we're experiencing things that feel uncomfortable or just there's a lot of inner turmoil. It's part of that human experience, but how can we progress forward in that process? So when we approach ourselves with compassion, it shifts the gears to this loving atmosphere where we can feel safe even just within ourselves to express that. And one way we can do that too is to journal. And journal, it may seem, kind of an overwhelming thing, because it may seem like you don't want to express those things that you're feeling because you almost have to relive it, but it can be very therapeutic. And I've found to be very therapeutic. And many people I've worked with have also found it to be therapeutic, where you just write down what's in your head, put it on paper, and just know that no one needs to see that. But once it's out on paper and you kind of remove it from your head, it processes differently. And unless you've experienced that, it's kind of hard to understand how when it's on paper, it would be different, but it really is processed differently. You can almost remove yourself a little bit from feeling like there's something wrong with you to being like, okay, I'm experiencing this right now. I recognize I feel like this, and that's okay that I feel like this. And how can I move forward even though I experience this? So it gives you a very meaningful perspective shift where you can start seeing things differently. And so that's really such an important perspective in being okay. And so I want to share a story. Like when I was dealing with a lot of that inner turmoil, one nickname that I was given was Smiley. And it kind of bothered me at the time. And it still, I don't really, I didn't really love that nickname. I didn't appreciate it, but people would call me Smiley because I'd always be happy and smiling. And I would say now when I'm happy and smiling, it feels more authentic to myself. But back then I would just be smiling at more of just putting on a happy face and that protective kind of shell, so I wouldn't allow people to see what was truly going on. And so there was a huge dissonance between what I was showing the world, this happy, everything is great, everything cup half full always, and never really let people see that inner side of me. And so when there's a big gap between what you're showing the world and what you're feeling, there's a lot of turmoil that happens with that. And that's what I experienced back then. Now I can be much more vulnerable and I can allow people in a little bit more. And again, like I said, this is a process. It's an ever-going process. There's moments where I feel like I'm really good at this, and there's moments I feel like I continue to struggle with this. And so the reason why I wanted to share this episode, and it is kind of off the cuff and a lot of random thoughts, is that I think it's really important for anyone who's listening to realize that it's okay to be not okay. And that we can just kind of sit in our emotions and recognize that this is part of the process and that we can move forward from this. This is not the end. What if this is just the beginning of a change? And recognizing that even if we have things that feel uncomfortable, even if we're coming down on ourselves or we're feeling like we're not enough, everything is temporary. And if we can meet it with compassion and we can ask ourselves the right questions of like, how is this helping me? What can I use this to move myself? How can I use this to move myself forward? What is the lesson I need to learn here? So things we can just ask ourselves within our head and recognize what the answer may be to help us move forward can be really, really powerful for moving you in a better trajectory versus maybe some of the questions that I was asking myself back then, and you may be asking yourself maybe in the past or now, is what's wrong with me? Why am I always feeling like this? How come this always happens to me? Those are going to give you the negative responses. So they're negatively set up questions. So any answer to that is only going to keep you stifled and stuck. So two big things that we can do to help ourselves move forward is going to be meet ourselves with compassion and just recognize that it's okay to feel these emotions and it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to not feel like everything is settled, and this is going to be an ongoing process, and this is part of the human experience. And also to ask ourselves the right questions and how we can learn from these emotions, because emotions really are an integration between what we've experienced in the past and what's the lessons we're supposed to learn to move ourselves forward. So recognizing that these emotions are actually working for us, and how can we interpret them in a way that it can make more sense to help us move forward. So just wanted to share that message because last night's conversation really just inspired me to recognize that we may all feel very alone in this journey, that we all have struggles. Everybody deals with something. There's not one person that gets through life without having something that's really challenging and some kind of struggle in their life. And it's important that we can be vulnerable and recognize that this is part of the human experience. And if we can be a community and support each other through this, we are all better for it. And if we can recognize that we can just be vulnerable with ourselves and and give ourselves compassion, then it makes it much easier to move forward and continue to grow. And that's really what it's about. It's about growing and developing personally throughout our lives. And that is really the catalyst for it. And the biggest turmoil I've noticed in my life and many of my patients is that when we feel stuck, that's when we experience turmoil. So let's let ourselves get unstuck and start using these emotions that maybe feel really uncomfortable to move ourselves forward. So I hope that serves you today. And I hope it brings you some value. And if you did find value in it, please share it with someone who could also really use this message today. And thank you again for spending your precious time with me.
Thank you for spending your precious time to listen to this episode of Rewiring Health. My mission is to inspire hope and healing through science-backed practices. If you found value in this, please share with 3 people and leave a review. By doing so, this message can be spread to those who need to hear it most. Also, to get updates on the most recent episodes, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for being part of this community, and I am forever grateful for you.